The effectiveness of biodiversity markets rests on whether or not they reward stewardship that really benefits biodiversity, or whether they rely on offsets which harm biodiversity elsewhere. When we first saw this bill, we were concerned about its potential for commodifying nature, about the scheme's integrity and around its interaction with our national environmental laws, particularly given its offsets provisions. So it was with great joy that I and others on this crossbench saw the use of biodiversity certificates for offsetting specifically excluded by the Senate 2 nights ago. It is a vast improvement on this legislation that it is now clear that biodiversity certificates cannot be used to meet offsetting requirements under Commonwealth, state or territory legislation. This markedly improves the integrity of the system, and I congratulate the government on this achievement. The aspect of this bill which sparks the greatest joy, however, is that the government has now, in response to sustained pressure from the crossbench in both chambers, revised the water trigger in the EPPC Act. What this means is that the Environment Minister must now consider the impact of all forms of conventional and unconventional gas development on local water resources. Unconventional gas projects are not currently covered by the water trigger, but rather are assessed and approved by relevant state and territory legislation. Sadly, what we have seen is that the states and the territories cannot be trusted with the responsibility for our environment. In recent months, we've seen the Northern Territory Government falsely claim implementation of all recommendations of the Pepper inquiry. It's given the green light to fracking of the Beetaloo Basin, a process which could well compromise the safety of 90% of the water relied upon by Territorians. It could well cause irreversible damage to a natural environment, an area the size of Victoria. Concerns were recently raised by climate scientists from the Territory who found methane bubbling in hot springs in the Territory, suggesting that exploratory fracking was already impacting the integrity of its aquifers, springs and rivers, including the iconic and beautiful Mataranka Hot Springs and Roper River. Last week, I met with representatives of First Nations communities potentially affected by this process in the Territory, and I heard their distress about the potential contamination of their country. Expansion of the water trigger was a pre-election commitment of this government, and I congratulate the Environment Minister and the member for Lingiari and the member for Mackellar for delivering on that commitment. Speaker, it is time for Australia to lead its way out of the climate crisis, and so I and many of the people on this crossbench will be glad to see this bill passed today with the improvements generated with our input, and I commend it to the House.